Have you ever stopped to think about leadership not as some course you take, but as a journey you live? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into a really powerful way of looking at it, one that reframes leadership development not as a weekend seminar, but as a process that unfolds over your entire career. So let's get right into it. And this idea right here, from author J. Robert Clinton, is really the heart of it all. It totally challenges that common idea of a quick-fix leadership program. It suggests something much deeper, much more personal is going on. You know, the idea that great leaders aren't just made in a classroom. They are forged, slowly, over time. Okay, so that begs the question, right? If leadership development really is this lifelong process, what does that journey actually look like? I mean, is there a map? Well, lucky for us, this framework provides exactly that, with clear stages and signposts to help guide the way. So to start, let's just talk about how this way of thinking is fundamentally different. We're moving way beyond that traditional one-size-fits-all approach you might find in, say, a typical business school classroom.
And you can really see the contrast here. Standard training, it's often kind of like a factory assembly line. It's valuable, for sure, but it's mass-produced. This other path, though, is more like a master artisan at work. The source material calls it divine custom molding, which, you can think of as this highly personalized process shaping a unique individual for a very specific purpose over many, many years.
So how does this whole journey actually unfold? Well, the framework maps it all out across 4 really distinct phases. It creates a kind of personal timeline for a leader's growth. Now, before we jump into the phases, we need to understand the tools that do the shaping. They're called process items. And listen, these aren't classroom exercises. They're real-life circumstances, that super tough project, a difficult boss, maybe an unexpected opportunity. These are the things that actually forge a leader's character for the long haul. All right, so here are the 4 phases at a glance. The journey kicks off with life foundations. Then it moves through periods of general and focused work, and it ultimately arrives at what's called a convergent life. Each phase builds on the one before it, so let's break them down.
Phase 1, Life Foundations, is exactly what it sounds like. It's where it all begins. This covers everything from your family upbringing to your very first job, or maybe a volunteer role you had. It's the raw material, the core values and those early experiences that become the bedrock for your future leadership. Next up is Phase 2, General Work. Think of this as your exploration phase. You're out there collecting a huge range of experiences, building this diverse toolkit of skills, and basically proving that you can be effective in all kinds of different situations, even if you haven't quite found your specialty just yet. Then you hit Phase 3, Focused Work, and this is where everything just starts to click into place. It's that moment when your unique talents, the specific role you're in, and the impact you're having all line up perfectly. It's that feeling of, okay, this is what I was meant to do. You've found your sweet spot. And that brings us to the final phase, the convergent life. At this point, the focus totally shifts from personal ambition to lasting impact. It becomes less about climbing the ladder yourself and way more about holding it steady for others. It's about solidifying a legacy by mentoring that next generation.
Now, this whole framework is really powerful, but I get it can feel a little abstract. So let's ground it in a real-world example from our source material to see how this kind of journey can actually play out over, say, 20 years. The author of our source, Paula E Simeon, she actually shares her own 20-year journey, and it maps to this model perfectly. She started out in a broad finance role. That's a classic general work phase. But over time, she developed these really deep skills in internal auditing, and eventually she landed in this highly specialized global compliance role. You can literally see the progression from a generalist to a focused expert. I mean, her story is just a perfect case study. She began with those broad skills, she honed a very specific expertise through real-world experience, and it all culminated in a focused, high-impact role. That's the lifelong development pattern in action right there, moving from general to focused.
So, all of this brings us to our final and maybe the most important question of all. If leadership really is a lifelong journey, how in the world do we prepare the next generation for the long road ahead?
And so, we'll leave you with this challenge right from the source material. How do we shift the mindset? How do we get emerging leaders to see this not as a series of short-term trainings, but as a long-term journey of patient, purposeful growth? It's a question that really reframes the entire goal of mentorship. It asks us not just to teach skills, but to truly cultivate a lifetime of leadership.